Hi, and welcome to another episode. We have a really special story today that's very close to my heart. But if you're new here, I'm Christine. I am a pediatric feeding therapist. I specialize in helping parents of really truly fearful eaters, but what you would probably characterize as picky. We help you go from stressed, stuck meal times to happy, confident foodies. We use a holistic approach that looks at the whole child, not just their behavior, not just their own motor skills, not just their sensory system, not just their mindset. We look at absolutely everything to make sure that we have the most comprehensive plan for each child. So, let me just dive into today's story. Um, and, I don't know how many therapists listen to this podcast because I'd say it's more geared for parents, but for sure, therapists can learn from this. So, if you have a therapist that you know that does feeding, please feel free to share the podcast with them. Um, but sometimes as therapists, I do want to tell you that we want progress sometimes more than the families do. And I feel like the case I'm going to share with you, and of course, I'm not going to use any names, but that is how I felt, at least. I'm sure that the parent would disagree with me and would adamantly swear up and down that nobody wanted more progress than they did. But I will tell you that no matter how much training or time we as therapists put into a case, it does not always work if the parent is not into it too. And this was a classic case of that, right? So today I'm sharing a case that really broke my heart. I'll never forget this family, probably forever. As a therapist, there are many people that you see, interact with, you're a part of their lives for a period of time. And then it's very strange because then all of a sudden you're not. And that's the way it should be. You're not supposed to be connected to thousands and thousands of families. It's very it's very emotionally draining because each of those families requires a lot of um connection and support, and it's hard to hold space for all of those people at the same time. So I believe it's just a general protective mechanism, but we're not a part of everybody's life forever. That's certainly not our goal, right? We're there kind of like a Mary Poppins, where we come in, we want to change things, we want to make everyone's lives better, and we want to leave as if nothing ever happened, as if it's just always been that way. And that's like sort of like I always feel like that Mary Poppins type of a person. And I've always resonated with that character of like, it was very sad when she left and the kids were upset and the family was sad, but the family was now a unit and they were functioning so organically together, and there was so much more love and connection. And that's how I feel. I feel like I come in and there is something broken, and we come and we sort of like fix things and we show people a different way, a different perspective, just like she did. And then we just kind of silently leave and leave them to the rest of their lives together. And, um, some people might think if you have this mindset that therapists are just in it for the money, I can I don't know any therapists like that. I'm sure they exist, but that is just not why people become therapists, especially in such a complicated area such as feeding. We love to see parents making progress. We love to see kids adding more foods to their diet. You might think, hey, the longer we're with them, the more money we spend. So they must love when we have these complex cases that take a long time. No, we want to see quick turnarounds. We want you to tell your friends how fast you've made progress with, our therapists in our program. We don't want you with us for a long time. So it's quite the opposite, just a different perspective if you didn't have that already. But here's the story. So we were working with this child. He had a pretty rare I don't even know. It wasn't even an actual diagnosis. They technically couldn't diagnose him because they hadn't really seen it before. They were calling it autism, I think, or they might have called it something else, but it wasn't. The thing is, he was nonverbal. He was only eating purees, lots of digestive issues, gagging, vomiting, constipation. Um, had a lot of therapy before, nothing was working. Um, and if you're like, oh, that's not my child, hang tight because there's still a lot to learn here. We started through the early intervention program with them and we started to make some slow progress, but it was meaningful and we were seeing some changes. So the parents were hungry for more therapy. They were like, we need to get more. Like, this isn't enough. Like, we're just starting to see progress. We need to sort of ramp this up, right? Somehow she was able to convince these people to get her more therapy. So we agreed to come another day. So he was getting a lot of therapy every week, more than any other child I've ever seen. I think it was 3 or 4 hours a week of therapy, which is a lot. She would have had it every day, was to come every single day. Um, but mom wasn't really in it. And remember, I said she really said she wanted this. She wanted him to eat, but I think she wanted a solution to the problem. She didn't want to be a part of the solution. She wanted to just have somebody come in and fix it. That's my true gut feelings, right? I can't speak for her, right? So this is a fairly one-sided story, I suppose. But every time we would go there, mom wasn't really around. Very rarely was she home. She was either at the store with her other children, on vacation with her husband, at a meeting. Who was there? The the nanny who didn't speak English, the housekeeper who didn't speak English. Sometimes a dad who was in the other room working, or maybe a grandmother. Um, but she had other kids, and I'm not saying because she had other kids, she didn't attend to this child as much, but there just always seemed to be like an excuse of why she couldn't be within us with the sessions. And I felt like emotionally, maybe because he just had so many needs. It's not unusual to like sort of check out and be like, okay, a lot to handle. You take the reins for this. I'll catch you later. So I'm not blaming her for that reaction. That's just a very normal human reaction, I think. But she did want the solution, but she didn't want to be a part of it. And that's the lesson here. You know, what happened after we left the case, because he aged out of the program. And what happened was, she wanted therapy to continue, but she didn't want to pay for it. She wanted therapy to continue, but she didn't want to bring him to the office. She wanted someone to come to the house, I believe, because it was easier for her to then exit. If she had to bring him someplace, she would have to be present the whole time. Also, they kind of lived far, I would say, but we offered the virtual coaching to teach. But even while we were there, she didn't take us up on all of the valuable knowledge that we had to give her. And, even things like, be like, hey, do you want to talk about what we did today or what I want you to do? Or I try to follow up. Hey, did you take that suggestion? It was always no. No, I didn't have time. No, it's been busy. No, it was too hard. So there was always like an excuse of her not to be part of what we were doing. So, we had left, but, you know, we'd hear from her a little while later. Hey, do you have anyone to come to the house? No, but we still have these two options for you. You can come in person to our office, or we can do virtual and teach you what to do and, continue following you that way. No, no, someone has to come. Someone has to be here in person. I need someone here at my house. So no, years later, still hearing from the same mom, still looking for help. She tried ABA, which is like the opposite of what we do, the behavioral approach. Um, we kind of walked her through what that probably was going to end up looking like. But again, it was just, but that person can come to the house. That person can be there. So I don't have to be doing it. Right. To me, that's what it always became. It was a repeated pattern of like, I want you to come fix it. I want somebody to come fix it. So that's just not what we do. I just can't be that. I'm just not the right therapist. I'm not the right fit. And that happens sometimes. You can be the best therapist in the world, but you're not going to be compatible with every scenario, every family. And that's absolutely okay. And I think new therapists have a really hard time with that. They feel like, oh, I must have failed, or oh, I must not be doing it right, or they don't like me. But sometimes it's just not the right fit, and it might not be the right time. Like this parent in 6 months to a year's time might be more ready to be the person that does the learning and does and implements. She just might not be there at this time in her life. And that's fine. Everybody's got their own journey, right? So I'm not like, I don't want you to think I'm like bashing this mom. I actually loved this mom. She was so kind, so nice. Um, and, you know, we both wanted him to make progress, but the way we both wanted to go about it was very different. Right. So I want you to know this is not about shame. It's just the truth. The truth is, it does not matter how rare this diagnosis is, how many complex problems your child has, how skilled the therapist is, how convenient the therapist is to come to you or not. It's not about how many sessions you have or how many hours per week you can afford to have therapists come. If the parent's not in it, it's not going to work. Still, 3 hours, 4 hours a week is very different from a parent who's living with a child who knows what to do. You're never going to be able to replace that. So because we have wonderful stories of very complex cases who came once a week and made remarkable progress much faster than what this child was able to do, even with more services. So it really is about parent involvement. And we've said that across tons of episodes if you've listened, right? Feeding therapy is very different from even something like physical therapy, where it's just muscle memory, where, you know, it's just a very intimate relational thing. Um, the biggest changes are not going to happen between the therapist and the child. They happen between the parent and the child at the table. And I've just seen it so many times now. It wasn't initially how we started off doing therapy or how I perceive therapy should be, but over time it's evolved into that because I've seen the parents who have fallen off and not made progress and what their journey kind of looked like and ended up. And then I've seen the parents who totally dove in and just embraced the process, had just a different perspective or a different attitude, and how the outcomes were just very different, right? So next week's episode is actually more about that. I'd say a flip story, like a positive story, but this is an important story too, because I really want you to know that even if you're going to therapy once a week, if you're not a part of the process, it's still not going to work as well as if you are. Right? Because this kid had tons of therapy, tons of support. We had lots of resources. We had the safe and sound protocol. I had my books. I had me. I was physically there wanting to teach her. and she just wasn't there. I couldn't talk to the wall and have the wall implement what I wanted them to do during the week when I wasn't there, So it doesn't matter how much one-to-one you get, you still have to know what's going on, why. And I think when she's ready, she'll be really ready. But so far, not ready yet. And that's okay. Whatever it is, right? But just know it'll be tough for therapy to stick until you're ready. Maybe you're listening and thinking like, oh my gosh, that is so mean. Like, I feel like I drop them off. They do something. I don't even know what goes on. I'm totally checked out. I don't change anything when I get home, right? So I just want you to know, like, you're not failing if that's what you've been doing. That's just the system. Maybe you didn't know any different. Maybe there wasn't anyone even asking you to join or participate. But you can choose differently. You can be the reason your child does transform. But you got to be willing to do it together. It's a joint effort. Okay. So if you're finally ready to be part of the change in your child's feeding transformation, come check out our Unlocking Mealtimes program. It is unique, one of a kind. You won't do it alone, but you will do it very differently than you have been. Right? We teach you we figure out what exactly is going on, work on a plan to remediate it, and then we start teaching you what to do and guide you every step of the way so that you don't get stuck, so that you're not ever on your own. You do need, I think, a guide at least. Not saying just take a course and then everything will be hunky-dory. No, you still need some guidance and help. Very rarely will a blanket approach work for everybody. And even within our course, sometimes there's still nuances of I know the video said this, but that's not what we're going to do for you because that doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z reason. So there is always an exception to every rule, even within things that the experts say, right? So if you're interested, definitely check out our program, Unlocking Mealtimes. Get your roadmap. We'll get you started so you have a plan. You know exactly what to do, and we could start seeing progress and make this the year that things start to turn around for the better on a permanent basis for your child. Because we want kids to enjoy food, to love food, because food and eating is something that if we want them to live a long, happy life, they have to be getting it right. You can't live on junk food. It's just not sustainable. There's too many conditions and diseases that manifest in later years from only eating processed garbage. And that is my truth. That is what I truly believe. So if you're aligned in that belief and you want your kids to eat real food, getting them to love food and not eating it because someone's forcing them to, or, some other reason, we want them to love it. And it does make everyone's life a lot happier and easier. So if you're ready to take that leap, come join us. And you could even get started by taking our 5-minute quiz. It is the piggyeaterstest.com. You'll learn about what type of eater you have, what level they're at, to give you some guidance about where to start. Okay. So we will hopefully see you on the inside, and we'll see you again next week for a totally different story.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.